Hello everyone. In this session, we are going to see some special actions that we do, like right click, double click on a specific object or some specific location by using X and Y coordinates, drag and drop objects, resize the objects, or working with the slider. So all these things can be achieved by using one simple class that is already there in Selenium, that is called as actions class. Actions. And when we use actions class, as we create object of any other class, we will have to create the object of this class also. So actions is the name, then action I take as object name equals to new action, and we need to provide the web driver on which we are going to perform the actions. So it is the driver, and we want to import the class from Selenium. So just click on import. So it will import it from Selenium interactions actions. Now we can use this action object to perform the actions like mouse hover on a specific object, or right click or double click, drag and drop. If the object is supported with drag and drop functionality, then we can perform drag and drop operation, or if we want to click and hold and move and release, all these different operations we can perform. So there is a very nice website, and it is jQuery UI, where you will see a lot of widgets with different uh, operations like draggable, droppable, resizable, and buttons, and there are a lot of things. And for Selenium testing purpose, this is a really good website. So let us start with the example of drag and drop. Let me select this one. Okay, over here, this is an object which we want to drag and drop onto this object. So simply, this is the target, this is the this is the source, and this is the target. We want to drag the source and drop it on the target. So in all such cases, when we want to drag an object and drop it somewhere, same process that we are going to learn now, we will use always. First, let us inspect the elements using Firebug. So this is the first element, which is draggable, it has ID. Second element, which is droppable, ID is droppable. But one thing, as we saw yesterday, whenever there is a frame, we first need to switch the driver to the frame. So as we can see over here, this particular section of the web page is part of this frame. So all we can do is, and generally we can see the number of frames which are there in the web page. Currently there is just one frame, so we can use the ID of the frame to switch to that particular frame. And then once we switch to the frame, we can use draggable and droppable IDs to create the XPath of corresponding objects, and then we will learn the method by using which we will drag and drop. Okay, so let me take the web page URL, and let us use driver.get to navigate to this URL. Here I'm going to use implicitly wait statement, just in case some of the elements are not ready for performing a specific action. Then before throwing the error, we can wait, make the driver wait for a certain amount of time. So I will use driver.manage.timeouts.implicitly wait. For example, I want to make it wait for 5 seconds, and then time unit will be seconds. So what this statement will do, as we saw in previous sessions, whenever driver is about to throw the exception that element is not found, it will wait for 5 seconds and try to find that element. And even after 5 seconds, the element is not present, then only it will allow the driver to throw that exception. Okay, and this is unique, or this is common for all the statements that we are going to write till the driver is active. Now, once we move to this particular page, we want to first let us switch to the frame also, because as we saw, this particular section is a frame and the elements on which we are going to perform operations are inside that frame, so we must be focused onto the frame. So we can simply use driver dot switch to dot frame, and as this is the only frame which is there on the web page, we can simply use 0 as the frame ID because there is just one frame. Now after we move to the frame, let us create two web elements. One web element for draggable, driver dot find element by, I would say, ID, and ID of the draggable is draggable itself. And similarly, let me create another element, but before that, let us import the web element from Selenium. And let me just copy the same line. Only thing I'm going to change is the ID from draggable to droppable, because that is the only change. So what we did, we created two web elements. First is draggable, second is droppable. So the name also should be changed over here. Drag and drop. Now we have source, we have target. All we need to do is use the action object that we have created over here. So to use the action object, just use action dot drag and drop. There is a method drag and drop. Actually there are two overloads over here: drag and drop with source and target, and drag and drop by source and x offset and y offset. Now the difference in between first and second method is, in case of first method, we should know what is the source and what is the target. If we know the target, then we can just pick the source and drop it on the target. Like in this case, we know the source, we can pick the source and drop it over the target. As simple as that. In case when we do not know the target and we just know the x and y coordinates of the target, all we can do is we can pick the source and drop it to the particular x and y coordinates. So it will still work as a drag and drop, but in that case, target should not be any, or needless to be any, web element. So simply for this particular thing, we will be using first method, drag and drop by using source and target. So source is drag, target is drop, and in actions class, this is for all the operations that we will perform using actions class. Whenever will use actions class, we have to use perform at the end. Unless we use perform, whatever action we are going to use, that will not get performed. So this is first thing which very important we need to remember. Any action we will use, we will have to make perform at the end to make it perform. Okay. And after this, let us just make the driver wait for some time so that we can see that operation is performed. So I am going to use thread.sleep just for visual purpose. Sleep 4000 milliseconds, and we will have to add a throws declaration for that. And at the end, let me quit the driver. So let us try to execute it. And as you can see, it just dragged and dropped. As simple as that. So like this, if you want to perform other operation, double click. So double click operation also can be performed in the same fashion. Action object that we created dot double click. Now double click also has two things: just double click and double click with web element. Only double click, what it will do, it will just double click wherever the cursor is, wherever is the pointer on the screen, it will just double click on that location. In the other case, if you want to double click on some specific element, like in this case, I will try to double click on this draggable object. So to do that, we just need to use this and use the object on which you want to double click. I don't think whether it is going to perform anything right now, but we can use some thread.sleep in between to see whether really it made a color change or something when we double click on that. Let us try to run and see. Okay, it double clicked, but there was no change over there. Similarly, there is right click also, action dot, and in this case they call it as context click. Context click also has two methods. Another overload is with the element, and the first method is wherever there is cursor on the page, it will just right click over at that position. Let us try to use this one with the context click on the web element. Let us try to right click on the draggable object, and I think when we click on right click on a draggable object, it might display something. Yeah, so this kind of menu should pop up. So let us try to run this, and also before it does that, I want to get some visuals so that I can add some weight over there. So let us try to execute this. Okay, so as you can see, that menu has popped up over here, and that is because it right clicked over there. Now this same drag and drop operation can also be performed by using a different set of operations, like click and hold on this object, move it to another object, and release. So if we club three operations together, we can perform this operation also. First thing is click and hold, move to the specific element, and release. And if we do that, same drag and drop will be performed. And in order to do that, we will have to use something like action dot click and hold. There is an operation with click and hold. Again, you can see there are two methods: click and hold anywhere where the cursor is, or click and hold a specific web element. So let us try to click and hold one specific element, that is drag. Then once we click and hold that element, we want to move that element to some specific. So there is move by offset and move by element. There are two methods, and there is another overload over here, move to element. So what we want to do is we want to use move to element, and we want to provide the elements, uh, the particular element on which we want to move. So move to element, and the name of the element is drop. So what will happen? It will click and hold drag element, and it will move to drop element, and after that we just want to release. Just release the web element which we kept hold of. So this is the element which we want to release, that is drag, which we are holding over here. So release. And one more thing comes up over here. Whenever we are performing multiple operations, we first need to build those and then use the perform. Whenever we are using multiple operations in one statement, the most important thing we want to do is first build those together and then perform the operation. It is exactly similar to drag and drop, but just another way of doing the same thing. So let us try to execute and see how it works. Same, click and hold, move, release. Now this thing can be very useful in case of some other things like resizable. Now over here we want to resize this particular thing. When we say resize, in the sense what, just click and hold, move, and release. Yes or no? Click and hold, move, and release. Click and hold, move, and release. So all we need to do is we want to just find this particular element, click and hold on that element, move and release. Now in this case, for moving, for this move operation, we do not know the exact web element on which we want to move, so we can use the x offset and y offset in that case. So in order to perform this operation for resizing, let us first find out the element, this particular element we want to find out. So this is the XPath of this element. Let me make some changes. This is the div tag, and we can use this particular thing. So in this case we will be using XPath by dot XPath, and this is the XPath, and the name of the element I will keep it as just drag. Okay, let it be. Now the action is going to be click and hold drag, then move to element. Let me remove this part. Dot move to element, and in this case move by offset will be good because we can just use some x coordinate and some y coordinate to move that element. So move by offset. If I say move like 60 on the x axis and something like 20 on the y axis, and dot release whatever web element we clicked and hold off, we can just release that, and dot build dot perform. So what will happen, it will get dragged by 60 on the x-axis and 20 on the y-axis, something like this, and it will look like we have resized that particular box. So let us run and see how it works. Oops, I did a mistake. I didn't change the URL over there. So we have a different URL in this case. So let us run and see. Before that, let me close this one. So let us run it. So as you can see, it just resized it a little bit. If we increase the x and y coordinates over there, it will resize it to a bigger scale. For example, 150. So when we run it again, we will see it got resized on a little bigger scale. Yep. So now you can see it's got resized. As we work with resize, the same is the case with slider. Let me find out some slider over here. Yes, slider. Like there are different types of sliders like slide up or down something, or slide in the horizontal way, slide with some numbers. There are a lot of, and just try to work on this side. They have a lot of different things which we can use. Color pickers. But the important thing over here which we are looking at is sliding. We have one web element. What are these? This is nothing but a web element. This is a web element. We want to click and hold of it. Now move it. To move it, we will be use move by offset, right? So we are moving it on x axis, right? There is no y axis. So y offset will be 0 over here. X axis will be either plus 100 or minus 100, or anything in the plus or anything in the minus if you want to go back, right? So let us try to take this example. Let us try to move and try to change the color over here. Okay, let me pick this URL, put it in our script over here. Process is going to be exact same. Click and hold, move, release, build and perform. All we need to do is we just need to find one object which we want to move. So if we take this one, this will be the X path. Let me just make some quick changes. This is a span tag, so let me put that over there. Span tag with ID red. And let me update the X path over here. And I'll just keep the same name for the web element. Now in this case, there is no meaning by putting the Y, because it will never be able to move it on the Y axis, because that is not designed that way. It can only move on the X axis. Let me just do it like 30 on the X axis, and then after waiting for some time, like 2 seconds, we will again try to move it on the X axis in the negative direction, like 40 on the negative. So if I say minus 40, so when we run it, we expect this red slider to go in the forward direction for something and then backward direction with something. Okay, so let us try to run it and see how it works. Okay, let me see what is the issue with that. Okay, sorry, I did that mistake over there. It is a div tag from which it starts, and then from the div tag it is going to the particular thing, that is span. Okay, let us take this screen. Let me save and run it. Okay, so you saw it went ahead and now it just came back. So to move it in the right direction, we will use plus X, and to go back we will use minus X. Whenever we try to deal with those, as they are not standard object types like a button or a drop down, a checkbox, a radio button, as they are not, or a text, as they are not standard object types, and someone who designs them, a developer, he can design them according to his imagination anyhow. As it is, not a standard buttons or standard objects, it is considered to be very challenging job for automating those. But with Selenium, as you saw, it's very easy. All we need to do is get that particular element with precision by using XPath, CSS path, or ID, or name, or whatever. Once you get that element, all we need to do is use actions class and perform the different operations what we saw, like drag and drop, or click and hold and move to some element, or move by offset, all these things. It's very easy. There are other things also, I would recommend just go through those, but most important ones we already saw, like build, click are just normal click and hold we saw, context click we saw, double click we saw, drag and drop we saw, uh, key down, key up. Key down, key up in the sense it will just press the key, like if I want to press F7 and then command and then something other key, so it will just keep those key down, and key up will just release those keys. Okay, move by offset and move to element, these things also we saw. Perform we saw, release we saw. The pause was there, but now they deprecated that. Pause is no longer present there. After release, just release or release some element. And send keys is normal. Send keys is like we will just enter some details over there, so it will feel like someone is sending the keys from the keyboard.